Three issues Obama said on national defense. He said he'd cut, quote, tens of billions of dollars in defense spending. He said Iran, Cuba, and Venezuela are tiny countries and not a serious threat.
Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, these countries are tiny compared to the Soviet Union. They don't pose a serious threat to us. Iran, they spend 1/100th of what we spend on the military. I mean, if Iran ever tried to pose a serious threat to us, they wouldn't stand a chance. Iran is a grave threat. It has an illicit nuclear program. It supports terrorism across the regions and militias in Iraq. It threatens Israel's existence. It denies the Holocaust.
And he said he would meet in his first year as president with rogue dictators without preconditions. Is that a foreign policy that shows strength to the world?
Where the British general said we must learn how to talk to our enemy. He was a British general, not a U.S. Can you comment?
Well, I mean, all I would say, I didn't actually see that. We were doing some other stuff last night, but I would, no, look, I'm trying to go around minefields these days and not blunder into them. But I do think you have to talk to enemies. I mean, again, you got to set things up. You got to know who you're talking to. You got to have your objectives straight. All the rest of this stuff. I mean, so I'm not trying to, again, get into the middle of domestic politics. But I mean, what we did do in Iraq, ultimately, was sit down with some of those that were shooting at us. What we tried to do was identify those, again, who might be reconcilable. We actually created a cell with a senior U.S. diplomat and a 2-star British general. By the way, we used the Brits because they've done this stuff a lot.
I think the important thing is his worldview, his willingness to sit down with Ahmadinejad without precondition, or Hugo Chavez, or the Castro brothers, without precondition, giving them legitimacy, affirming their behavior and attitude towards their own people as well as towards us. It shows a lack of knowledge and experience and therefore judgment.
Governor Palin, you had echoed those comments in recent days.
And the conflict with the Taliban is getting worse. We have to recognize the fact that a solution in Afghanistan has come by accommodation, a decentralized accommodation with the various forces in Afghanistan. And that cannot be achieved by the force of arms. The Afghans simply don't like foreigners with guns in their country. And if we're simply going to try to crush the Taliban, we'll probably have an escalating guerrilla war that spreads gradually, but visibly so already, to Pakistan.
Iran?
Iran, we have to give negotiations a fair shake. We haven't tried to negotiate. We have said to the Iranians, we'll only negotiate with you if you make a concession on the central issue of such negotiations before the negotiations begin. Well, that's not a serious way to negotiate.
And finally, on Pakistan?
Pakistan, I think we have to be very clear to the Pakistanis that we want them to do what they can, and they should be doing more, to crush al-Qaeda. But we also have to realize that Pakistan is very vulnerable, very tense, and if we get engaged in military skirmishes with the Pakistanis inside Pakistan, we'll get sucked into Pakistan's problems. And bear in mind, that's 170 million people. If we get involved in that, we're going to be stuck for years and years and years to come.
Hamas. And let me show you what John McCain said to Sky News 2 years ago to Jamie Rubin about talking to Hamas.
Do that. Do you think American diplomats should be operating the way they have in the past in working with the Palestinian government if Hamas is now in charge?
They're the government, and sooner or later we're going to have to deal with them in one way or another. But it's a new reality in the Middle East.
Now, McCain went on to say that there'd be conditions based on Hamas's policies, which is the same position Barack Obama has.
No, but let me just make an observation. And this is unfair of what you just did, Al. That's unlike you to be unfair.
How am I unfair?
Because when he said that, Hamas had not yet started firing rockets at civilians from the Gaza Strip inside Israel. At the time, Hamas had just been elected in what turned out to be a fraudulent